Okay. Good morning and welcome to our third edition of Parenting During COVID-19. I'm your main host, Craig Knippenberg. I'm a child family therapist here in Denver, Colorado, and also author of a book, Wired and Connected, which I may talk about a little bit more. But I want to welcome you again, and it is an absolutely stunning day here in Denver, Colorado. It is going to be warm, 65, and blue skies. And one of the best things I think you can do, before we get to today's topic, a couple intro points, but one of the best things you can probably do is every day just take a couple moments to go outside and just soak up some sun if you've got a sunny area. And literally, you wouldn't know the pandemic's going on if you're just out there peaceful and feeling the sun and no noise. It's just surreal. It doesn't feel like anything's going on. It's all normal. Want to thank Dr. Jim Langley, who was on Thursday morning, had a great program for us Thursday. We are going to be moving to 2 days a week, so it's going to be every Tuesday and Thursday at 9:30, and I'll tell you about our guest. And keep in mind, we know a lot of you are busy. Many of your children are homeschooling now, and this is a conflict with the time kids are there. Our biggest thing is, as therapists, we are busy in the afternoons and evenings. That's our busiest time. So it necessitates us recording in the mornings. But this is a recorded program, so you can always go back to it if you can't stay on, or if you have an interruption from your children, like many of us do constantly. You can always go back to that. And want to thank again my IT person, Sydney, who's behind the scenes recording this while she's managing 2 teenagers and a preschooler. But you can always come back. It will be recorded, and we'll keep doing it 2 days a week with a variety of guests, which I'll talk about at the end of each program. If you have some questions, you're welcome to chat. You can chat those in on Facebook, and Sydney will forward those to me. I'd also love to hear any adventures that you've been doing for your family to have that adventure mindset through this. And having said that, again, we want to think about and always hold in our thoughts and prayers those families who are struggling with the virus at home, or those who have lost family members. We're certainly seeing a lot of footage out of New York City and the number of deaths there. And all want to extend our best to all of those people and our medical workers. Now, I always like to start with a little positive piece. So for our own adventures, my daughter and I, after last week's podcast, I mentioned we were going to go to the park. And while taking your kids to the park or riding your bikes to the park and having a picnic lunch is pretty standard fare for those of you who have preschoolers or younger children, they'll love that. It's a little different when you have a 14-year-old daughter, and to actually get her to leave the house with her dad and go for a bike ride and be seen in public, perhaps, and just sit there. And we sat there on a sheet. It was a beautiful day and enjoyed our lunch and just had a most amazing time together. Later that evening, we stood together on the back deck just watching sunset and looking at the orange. So we've also joined into the bear craze. If you haven't heard about it, it's putting a teddy bear in your window. And younger children, we live on area of Denver here called the Highline Canal, and our street dead ends into the canal. We have a bridge, so we have lots of neighbors coming by. And the parents of the younger children take their kids out on strolls, and the kids try to count teddy bears in windows. So if you have a teddy bear laying around the house, pop it in your window, and you might make another child's day as their count goes up. And we have continued our contributions. My daughter, we turned them in last night, took them over to her school. She collected 2 trash cans full of shoes for the soul, or soles for the souls, I believe it's called, but was able to haul in 2 cans full of shoes. So that was a good feeling through a difficult time. Now, today's topic, I was thinking about how do we continue to help our kids and ourselves as we really move through what's been an unknown day-to-day unfolding situation. 3 weeks ago or so, when our school evacuated on a Friday afternoon, we thought, okay, it was surreal. It was a bizarre experience. We popped into action, calmed the children down. I got them picked up, had the school cleaned, and we were back in business on Wednesday for school. and it felt like, okay, we got through this phase, or we got through this, everything's great. This is going to be the new normal. 2 days later, schools are all shut down. And the word was, we'll be back in 2 weeks. We're looking at 2 weeks. So everybody's geared up for 2 weeks. And then you hear on the news, it's, probably going to be mid-April, maybe Easter. So then you gear up for that. And now we're looking at more like the end of April. Yesterday, our governor announced that schools probably aren't going to be going back at all. So we're going to be heading, looks like this is summer. The New York Times had the New Yorker, had a lovely, funny cartoon. It's a couple sitting there and they're on their phones. And the one said something about the new normal that he just got a text on or read in the online news. And the partner said, is this the new normal or the new normal an hour ago? And that's pretty much what it feels like. Every hour we have a new normal to adjust to. So today I want to share an analogy of how to help explain this process to your kids. Kind of a story I developed years ago to help children with change and loss. And we do want to think about the immediate mental health impact on kids and perhaps the longer health impact. I was interviewed and was in the Huffington Post last week. They did a story on what are the psychological impacts on kids, what are the symptoms you're seeing now, but also how's this going to look long term. So they talked about how, one therapist talked about your child might be more clinging. You might see some regressive behaviors, sucking the thumb again, wanting to sleep with parents in the bedroom at night. That's another one that's probably happening around our country right now. I talked about children's temperaments, and the anxious child's probably going to be more anxious. The sad child's probably going to be more sad, and the child that is prone to anger is probably going to have more outbursts. In the terms of long-term effects, there was some research after World War II for children in London who were each night sheltered down in the tube, down in their underground, while their parents were up on the surface fighting the fires and withstanding the bombing raids. And long-term studies for those children who are isolated from their parents found that those children did struggle with some attachment issues with their parents, that it really created an anxious attachment with their parents. Now, the good news for us is we're all sheltered at home and our kids are with you, which is a blessing and sometimes a little difficult at the same time. So that's a good part for us, but still it is gonna take a toll over time. Now, in doing this, again, you have to start with yourself and look at what are the emotions you're going through, validating those emotions and not dwelling on them too long, but moving on. And that's what you're going to do with your kids. I've in the last week since we talked, it really started to set in for me. I talk to my 93-year-old mother every day, her and her friends are locked down in their retirement community and having a great time. They play pinochle every day and have wine and snacks, and they're just having the time of their lives. But it does worry me about her 93, and if she had a stroke or fell and had to be into the nursing unit there they have, and that we couldn't go back to see her. And that's a tough one. And we've had a lot of kids coming to therapy or in our groups who have been talking about their fear for their grandparents. Really also starting to feel the loss and the absence of my son, who's in medical school, and he's sheltered and studying all the time, and haven't seen him in about 3 or 4 weeks, and just longing to go fishing with him again. And yesterday, finally, I'm very blessed to be the consultant at St. Anne's Episcopal School here in Denver. We have an amazing, beautiful campus, especially this time of year with all the flowers coming out and the children there running around, singing and laughing and playing and saying hello. To think about not going back to campus for the rest of this year is really hard for me personally to miss that. So it's really starting with your own. And then in terms of explaining it to your kids, I'm going to have you visualize a drawing that I've done for years with kids with all sorts of changes in life. It could be the death of an animal, death of a family member. It could be a divorce, could be just about anything. And this is a good one you can explain to them just for what we're going through now with COVID-19. But basically, I start on the picture in the top left corner, and I draw a picture of all the family members, and we pretend they're here in Colorado and they're going for a hike in the mountains one day. And I have the sunshine and the birds in the sky and the family's all happy. And you're just feeling this great, peaceful, normal existence as you're hiking along. And then all of a sudden, there's a rock that you don't see, and you fall over the rock and you drop down into a ditch, or you drop down into like an old miner's shack, which they have quite a few of those here in Colorado. And I draw the picture, I like to draw stick figures, and I have the picture of the child who is falling through the air, and it's a phase of shock. You're in shock. You don't know what's going on. And then you kind of you fall to the ground again, and you take a minute, you pause for a little bit to check yourself out, kind of figure out what's going on, and that's sort of thing we had to do when this started 3 weeks ago. It's like, whoa, what's really happening here? At that point, when I talk to the kids, I ask them, now usually after you hit and you realize you're okay, what do you think you start to feel? And the most common answers the kids talk about is, well, they're worried. Are they going to get out? How did they get out of here? So they're feeling this anxiety. How did I fall in this ditch? How did I fall into this mine shaft or cave? And how do I get out? And feeling some anger about it and being upset that rock was there and that we're down here. I don't want to be down here. And sadness about this being in this state of affairs where we've fallen down here, and feeling some sadness and some loss and wanting to return to normal. And so you want to ask, you can draw that picture with your children and then just let them share sort of their emotions that they're having now that they've fallen down into this ditch. Our group kids, I'm always constantly hearing stories, again, worries about grandparents. One child talked about that his mom was going to buy him a certain toy, and now he's worried that he won't get that toy. So some of the things the kids might be feeling are a little more superficial to us than others, but those are losses that they hadn't planned on. They want to feel in control and have things the way they were wanting. So you're just wanting to validate when they share those and say, yeah, that is a loss, whether it's the toy or the worries about grandparents, or being angry about this. It's pretty okay to be angry about this. Like there's times when I'm feeling this really kind of this sucks. I don't like to use that word too much, but this is really tough, and not real happy about it. And thinking about my mom, and this brings on some sadness. Now, what's different with this drawing is that we hit once a couple of weeks back, and then when you hear the news again, that now it's 2 weeks. So we're going to be sheltered in 2 weeks. Well, that's sort of like falling off another rock, or you're trying to get out. And so when I talk to kids about what they would be feeling down there, then I look at them and I say, now, if that did happen to you and you fell down that ditch, what would you want to do? And every kid, over thousands of kids, immediately says, well, I'd want to get out. I'd want to get out of here and get back up to where I was. Well, of course, we want to get out. Now, on this one, we geared ourselves up and we started, and then we heard about 2 weeks. And again, it's like you're trying to find your way out and you fall down another level. And that's going to resurface those feelings of sadness and worry and anger all over again. So we talked about sharing feelings last week. This is not a one and done kind of thing. This is something that's going to continue to need to be done as we go through the various phases. So then when we heard that we're looking towards the middle of April, end of April, it's like, uh-oh, we just fell another level lower. Excuse me. So this continuing of having the delays requires that your child needs to express their emotions, being in touch with your own, and then really gearing up for, okay, we're still going to get out of here. We're going to keep marching. We're going to keep moving forward, even though that sometimes we go down another road or a path and we fall a little bit further and we dust ourselves off and we keep going until the moment when we start to see some light through all this. Now, after you've done that and explored those emotions, again, this is going to be week after week, you want to turn to, well, how can we have some control in this situation? What can we do to have some control? Now, I did talk about the need for structure last time and setting up a schedule. As you probably know by now, that can be very difficult, especially when you've got younger children, if you got the teenagers. And I cracked up this morning. I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and the article was Parents Cave into Chaos. And it talks about how many parents set out with the best intentions to have structured routines, and now they've just abandoned them. I'll read you a couple samples that I thought were cute. One parent talked about they had some ground rules. They were don't graze on snacks, do chores, and don't get hurt. A few days later, they added anything used as a weapon will be confiscated. And they had to take the golf clubs away from the two boys who were sword fighting out in the garage with dad's golf clubs. One mom talked about she made up a new schedule for her teenagers. 11 a.m., wake up. 11:30, yell upstairs to mom that you're hungry while she's on a work Zoom call. 12:15, complain about the food. So there you have it for teens. I did like one gentleman who's a professor working from home, and he said, I kind of gave up on the idea of a schedule. Now we just try to have one goal for the day. So what I liked about that, even if you can't maintain that schedule you're hoping for, at least to create some goals for yourself or your kids, to have at least one goal you can work on. So as you talk about, well, how can we have control over this? Maybe one of your children could really work on sharing their toys with their siblings and say, this is a time when sharing with your little brother and sister, even though you don't want them to touch your Lego set. This might be a time that it'd be really helpful for the family if you could share your Lego set. Respecting parents' time alone. That's the goal for the kids. You got to respect them, mom and dad. Dr. Langley talked about him and his wife going out for their little scotch at sunset outside on the deck. That's the time the kids have to respect mom and dad. For my daughter, one of the ways she's done this past week to take control is she decided to paint her room, including her furniture. She had painted all her furniture at the start of middle school in these just really wild neon colors, neon green, neon purple, and neon pink. It was overwhelming to me, and the walls and everything. And she decided she wanted the new high school look. So we got up to the hardware store, which are still open. I got her some paint, and on Sunday she was out. We moved all the furniture outside. She's taped off all her walls, has that ready, moved her furniture out in the front yard, and she was out there sanding all day and primed all the furniture, and now it's all set up, ready for her to start painting, and really gave her a fun adventure. It was also great because being out in the front yard, all the parents with their strollers and little kids and dogs walking by, I think she picked up 5 or 6 babysitting jobs for the future when this is over. So there was another dividend on that. You could also consider a positive sticker chart for kids. Kids often love the little sticker charts. Your preschoolers, your first graders, kindergartners love to have a positive sticker chart. So you may just set up a goal, and maybe it's everybody in the family. Kids do better when they know their parents have a goal too. So mom's going to have a goal, dad's going to have a goal, and those can change week to week. They can change day to day if you need to. So just having a goal for each of you in the family, and then you could create some stickers to put on a chart. You could have those stickers go to something. It could be contributions to your favorite charity. It could be something for a family activity, maybe some money towards a family activity when this is over and we're able to get out and travel again. So it's creating some specific goals, and that's no different if you had fallen in that ditch. We're just going to say, okay, we're going we're going to hike for a half hour, see if we can't find our way out. And everybody needs to carry their gear. We're going to drink some water. We're going to move for the next half hour, and then we'll reassess where we are and let's take our next step. We'll get geared up again, and we'll just keep going. So really, what sense of control can your child have, and reinforcing that. Again, for your child who's getting angry a lot, getting upset with their siblings, the goal may be just to go to your room when you get upset. If you can just disengage and go to your room when you're upset, you can earn a sticker. And if you can then calm yourself down and go to your special place in your room. This is a great time for your kids to have like a little special fort in their bedroom, or a space in the basement if you have a basement, some place where your child can retreat to and have a little place to calm down. And it might be where they have a favorite pillow to sit on, one of those beanbag things. I see a little fourth grade girl who has like some scarves hanging, and some, it's like her fairy den, and that's her place to retreat. So you do want everybody to have their own space they can go to when their feelings are just getting out of sorts. They're getting angrier, they're exploding. And then you can reinforce for your child through the sticker chart, them walking away, creating some distance, and being able to calm themselves down. And do some deep breathing and trying the 5-finger breathing, but just a place where they can go to have calm and sanctuary. And so that right now, having those forts set up is a good thing. Looking for new adventures for your kids. We just started watching, my daughter and I did binge watch Anne of Green Gables and part of last week. Absolutely loved it. And then we've started a new family TV show now, which we maybe once every 2 weeks we'll eat in front of the TV, have dinner in front of the TV. But we're pretty much doing that every night now. And we're watching, it's called Once Upon a Time. And it's this delightful story of Disney characters who are in the present moment. And it's all these old Disney characters in the present. And they're trying to figure out the mysteries of what's going on. And it really is quite fun. So looking for something new like that. And certainly for us, it's not normally in front of the TV, but this is the time when that's working great. Also, the one thing that all of us can do, and you want to reinforce this over and over, I listened to a really great podcast by a doctor from, I believe it was Cornell, who talked about the best way to protect yourself is just wash your hands and don't touch your face. Wash your hands and don't touch your face. And to just continue to go over that with your children, that if we're outside or we've touched some things, been somewhere, let's wash our hands and don't touch your face. And by doing that, we can really reduce the risk of contacting the virus or spreading the virus. Then finally, on this idea of you're down in that ditch, it's really important for kids to understand that part of resiliency is having hope that others are up there cheering you on. And there's people out there that are back up on the trail who are wanting to help you get out of that ditch, or out of that cave. And what I like to draw for the kids is little ropes coming down from the top. And what are the ropes that are going to help us get out of here? So health workers, doctors and nurses who are out there working, they're a rope for us. The people at the grocery store who are willing to still work and come and risk being exposed, that's a rope for us. So the delivery people is a rope for us. So you want to help identify the various ropes your child has that's helping them out. And it could be contact with relatives on Zoom or with grandparents on Zoom, that we're all in this together. Another thing for my daughter that has been great, her church youth group now they're doing their youth group on Zoom. And it's just been fabulous. They've fun jokes for the kids and activities. They even had pictures. Kids sent in pictures of art they did, poetry they did. My daughter sent in one of her pictures that they put on the show. But that youth group for her has just been an important part for her in middle school, and it will be in high school. It's on every Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, and now they're doing it online. And that has been a wonderful rope for her. So really think about who are the ropes, what are the ropes that can help us through this? Also really encouraging your kids to thank their teachers. Our school went back to school yesterday, I did get a question about that, which I'll address here at the end. But we went back yesterday on Zoom and the different technology bases that they're using, and really thanking your kids' teachers that they're back to work and trying to help your kids through this whole process. So you're really thinking about, okay, what are some of these ropes? I would emphasize too that we know now from Seattle and Denver reported yesterday, or in the news this morning, that these stay-at-home shelter-in-place orders are working, that they're seeing a drop-off in Seattle from their efforts, and here in Denver, the doubling rate of the spread has gone from 2 days to 4 days. So the spreading the virus is starting to slow down. So there is some of that light at the end of the tunnel that's coming up. And if you're going to focus on news stories, I would, with your kids, I'd focus on the positive ones, that this is really paying off. And finally, just having that adventure mindset where you can think about what are the things that we could do, what could we create out of this. And finally, now that we're starting to see the light, another big rope for all of us to have is, and to nurture with your kids, is that the hope and the dream that we are going to get through this. We are going to get back up to where we were. It'll be a new normal, won't be like the normal before, but we will get out of this. Is just think about, well, how do we want to celebrate when this is over? How do we want to celebrate this, and what are the things we want to do? I just saw in the paper today in China now, there's people doing what they're calling revenge shopping, which is they're so tired of not being able to shop, they are going out and spending oodles of money just to feel like they can shop again. I'm thankful for shopping. But talk about with your kids, what are the things we might want to do, maybe a trip. What do we want when we can get back to normal? What are the things we want to do? And really emphasizing that we are resilient people, that we will bounce back. We will get through this. We'll continue. Years ago, after 9/11, I addressed our community of students and parents the next morning, and at a special service for 9/11. And I brought along a teacup from home, one of our China teacups, and I brought along a ball, a little bouncy ball, like a rubber ball. And I was talking to the kids, and I asked the little kindergartners, I said, now, if I took this cup and I drop it, what's going to happen to that cup? It's going to be shattered. It's going to be all over the floor. Now, if I take the ball and I drop it, what's going to happen? The ball's going to bounce back. And resiliency for all of us is about bouncing back. We are going to bounce back through this. There are going to be times when it feels like the cup broke, and you want to validate that for your kids, but we are going to bounce back through this process. Now, I thought I had some questions come in over the week and wanted to address a couple of those. One came from a parent who was concerned about, this was before the shelter in place in their community, the kids at the park playing COVID tag, and rather mortified that children were playing a tag game based on the virus. That is incredibly normal for kids to do that. Kids deal with stuff through play all the time and through humor. That's how they learn about the adult world, what's going on and those frightening things. And it's no different than playing, Boogie Monster tag or ghost tag, or these various games where kids are trying to come to grips with their fears. After Columbine, we had so many teachers upset because literally the day after the shooting, kids were playing shooting games on the playground and pretending that they had guns on the playground. And that was a tough one for teachers to wrap their head around. Why are these kids doing that? And it's not that they lack empathy, it's just they're trying to figure it out. After 9/11, there was a couple of kids on the playground who were, predictably so, pretending they were airplanes crashing into the playground structures. And while as adults we might think that's just so abhorrent, that is the way kids come to grips with reality. So if they're playing COVID-19 tag, that's what they're going to do. That's how they get through stuff, through play. And so you just want to help them see that that's how you get through things. And as playing, we understand that as kids, but we also need to think about well, it is a real thing, and there are people that are being hurt by it, and there's families that are sad by this. So we also need to keep the empathy there when kids are playing such activities. Did have a couple things on homeschooling. I'm hoping that next week we can have one of my associates, Angie Rothkamp, on. She's been homeschooling for the past 15 years. She's a family therapist and has homeschooled two of her children, and I think she can give us a lot of solid advice on that. This first week, some of you in your second week, some of you won't start back probably till next week. I think what I've told my daughter and everybody's recognizing is the first week's going to be a learning curve. It's going to be a lot of tech problems. It's got to be a lot of just learning how to deal with this, how to manage all these kids on Zoom and wanting to chat each other and believing the teacher can't see what they're chatting and trying to be funny, and also trying to get some work done that you just have to embrace. There is going to be a learning curve. Murphy's Law for our school yesterday, first day, one of the programs they were going to be using, I think it's called Seesaw or something, was going to be part of the program, and apparently that program went down for 2 hours yesterday. So on the first day, the program went down. So they had to come up with alternatives. But over time, I think that's going to get easier for your kids and easier for the school to operate. Again, you weren't hired as a teacher at home. Most of you aren't teachers. And have no idea, no desire to homeschool your kids. And I would set your bar pretty low. I wouldn't try to do too much right now with that, have too high of expectations. That's especially true if you have an exceptional student. So if you have a child with ADHD, if you have a child with, say, dyslexia, maybe autism, they're going to particularly struggle with this. That one, it's a change in the routine, and they often don't deal well with changes in routine. And it's hard enough already just doing homework on a nightly basis. I think all parents before this outbreak would agree with me that homework has destroyed family life in our country. That we've been obsessed with homework and kids coming home with all this stress and doing homework and more homework. And when you have an exceptional student, that gets even tougher to get them to sit down and read again. And they don't want to read. They're tired of reading. I know for myself as a dyslexic, I used to refuse to read. Now, we didn't have a lot of reading assignments, which was great for my mother, but I would just refuse to do it. I didn't want it, didn't like it. And so when you have exceptional kids, it gets much tougher. And I would really encourage you, just do the best you can and let it go. And if your kids can do a little bit more of it each day, that's a positive thing. So you might have a positive sticker, positive reinforcement chart for those kids, to say, hey, yesterday we got 15 minutes in. Let's see if we can do 20. Or yesterday we did that math packet and we got a page done. Let's see if we do a page and a half. And just any step they can take to move forward, I'd reinforce that. One of my favorite stories was a mom who a year ago, her son I was talking to her son, he has dyslexia, and he came in, he was all excited because he got his first A on his spelling test. He got like 10 out of 11, or he got 10 and a bonus word. And it was first time ever because he usually got C's and D's on his spelling test. And I was so excited for him. I said, how'd you do it? Like, what happened? He said, well, my mom gave me junior mints. And I was like, what? He said, yeah, we practiced spelling words and at home with flashcards. And for each one I got right, she would give me a junior mint. And I'm like, that's great. And it worked. Now, most pediatricians are not going to recommend, or teachers not going to recommend to parents that use junior mints to motivate spelling for a child. That's not in the parenting handbook or the pediatric handbook. But there are times with exceptional kids or during exceptional times. And this is one of those exceptional times when you do what works. And if that's going to motivate your child and get them to do a little bit more work, I would just go for it. It's just fine. And you may have to remind them we're not going to do that in the future, by the way. Also want to just give a shout out to teachers, I think right now, I think one of the most difficult things as a parent, if you're a parent and you're a teacher and you have kids at home, and your kids at home are supposed to be doing the online school, and you have to teach online school to your students. And that has really got to be a tough deal. So I really give a lot of support and appreciation for those teachers out there who are also parents and having to deal with this. But hopefully we'll have Angie on next week, and she can give us some tips on helping with the online school. Another question came in about what's my favorite behavior management technique. There's quite a few that I like in terms of reinforcing positive behavior or cutting off negative behavior. I can tell you in the research that if you want to motivate a kid to change their behavior, 80% of your interactions should be positive. So it's positive reinforcement, celebrating successes. 20% would be the negative or the consequences. Now, the other thing when you're disciplining children, it's important not to talk too much, and don't threaten over and over or say it over and over. Please pick up your shoes. I told you to pick up your shoes. I told you to pick up your shoes. Why aren't you respecting me? You're never respecting the family. And when you leave your shoes out, it's disrespecting all of us. That is way too many words, and you've asked way too many times. So you want to keep it short and sweet, or nip it in the bud, and don't use a lot of words. Now, the one I do like in particular, especially if you have children that struggle with their presidential functioning, with impulse control and self-control, is called 1, 2, 3 magic. That's 1, 2, 3 magic, written by a psychologist named Thomas Phelan. And it's Phelan, Thomas Phelan. He's a parent of 2 ADHD kids, and is a great speaker. I heard him 25 years ago. But it's basically sort of grandma's old, that's 1, that's 2, and if you get to 3, then there's an automatic consequence. Now, in terms of consequence, you have to really think about what works for your child. So it could be, for the younger ones, a little timeout in the timeout chair. It could be a loss of some of that gaming time that I know they're loving right now, most of the kids. It could be lost of TV program. In the old days, we wouldn't get to have our dessert. Was one of the positives that was held out for us. But you find something that motivates your child. So it's just, that's 1, that's 2, that's 3. And then there's a consequence. So you're just going to use numbers. You're going to ask them, tell them what they need to do. And if not, then you start counting. Or if they're arguing with you or their siblings, and you say, stop. I also like the phrase request, command, and consequence. So you ask for something to be done. Please pick up your shoes. Always asking in a positive way first. If they do it, great. Lots of positive reinforcement. Thank you, honey. I really appreciate that. If they don't, then it's pick up your shoes now, or there's going to be a consequence. And hopefully they'll do it. Otherwise, you then apply the consequence. Now, again, I mentioned in the last week's program, I'd avoid too many spontaneous requests throughout the day. It is just going to get too negative. I think you're better off as a family just having an all-house cleanup at a set time each day, versus constantly bringing up the hundreds of things that come up every day with all of us stuck living together. And again, validating that for your kids. Sometimes when your kids can just express their emotions about what it's like for them to be going through this, how they're feeling about it, can really clear up a lot of behavior once you get that out. I had a really nice conversation with my daughter last night who just expressed how she feels so trapped in her room and has lost so much of her freedom. And as a 14-year-old, she rides her bike everywhere and is used to riding her bike to the mall, to the coffee shop, to just about anywhere. The library, her favorite place in the world, and the used bookstore. And being able to just flash up there on her bike and look at books and read. And she's lost that freedom. And she's stuck at home with 2 parents who are both working and needing to do stuff, and we're older, and that's not a lot of fun for her. And just validating that for her last night in the discussion was pretty meaningful. And so I said, honey, we can still get on bikes and ride, but I understand how you're feeling trapped and you're with your parents and you want to be free. So just getting those feelings out can really help with the behavior management. And again, I would probably stick to certain times where you clean things up as a family and not too much reminding them of different things. If you have several special needs students at home, if you've got, say 2 kids with ADHD, you have a child with ADHD and learning disability and another child with autism, the magic thing is going to try to be to divide and conquer and to say, okay, well, this one, we're going to do the homeschooling at this time with a parent maybe needing to be supervising that, and the other 2 can have some free time in another area of the house. And then we're going to set up a time for this student to do theirs, and then for this child to have their time to do their online school. You can try that, separating those. If you have 2 or 3 computers, you could put them all at the table with headphones on and try to get them to do some work as a family. And I would have a sticker chart for each child. They can earn some stickers for trying their hardest and doing the homeschooling that's coming through each day. But if you've got several exceptional kids, it makes it so much harder. So don't beat yourself up. Don't be shameful. And this is not a time for shame-based parenting. This is a time to just say, hey, kids, we're going to give it our best. We can wear our PJs if we want. We'll have jammy day, and then we'll have a special snack after we're done with our online school. Whatever it takes to try to get them to motivate a little bit more. And basically, in the brain that I talk about in my book, it's trying to get their dopamine levels up. You're trying to create a little bit of fun or excitement that will increase their dopamine levels. And when dopamine levels go up to the front part of your brain, it helps you pay attention better. They also cross through your pleasure path. So if something's enjoyable and fun, kids are going to pay attention better. Their dopamine levels are going to go up, and they'll have a better chance of trying to stay focused and get a little bit of work done. And if they get some stuff done, I would really just try to celebrate that as a family. And each day we're going to try it a little bit more. Finally, another question that came through was how to handle your own stress. On Thursday, we're going to have Michelle Denoy, who's a child and family therapist. Michelle that works for us. Michelle has a toddler at home, and she's also expecting her second baby in June. And she's going to talk about mindfulness on Thursday morning at 9:30. So certainly a part of stress management is being mindful. And she's going to be addressing on how to do that. I think for all of us, if you can have some, even if the structure is going out the window with your kids, if you can try to have some structure for yourself or some routines for yourself where you are exercising. Exercise is an important thing. Getting outside, just having some time outside by yourself or with your partner each day. There's also what you call rituals in families. Rituals are things that you do over and over, and it could be every day. It's those rituals at bedtime when you put your kids to sleep and you do butterfly kisses and you have your special prayer. Or we have a little jar every night before we start dinner where we write down what we're thankful for that day, what we've been blessed with, and we put those little stickers in the jar. We do that as a family every day. Could be stuff you do every week. But when families have rituals, it really grounds the children and it grounds all of us and helps relieve some of our stress. Some research years ago that found they looked at alcoholic families or children who grew up in alcoholic families, and they found a big difference in terms of outcomes. So even though there was alcohol in both families, some of the families maintained rituals. So they still had their Sunday dinner, or they still had their Tuesday night TV night, or they still had celebrating birthdays and holidays. And they had some things they did as a family, maybe skiing every Saturday. Then kids who grew up in alcoholic homes where there wasn't any rituals, where it was just chaos, it was day-to-day, moment-to-moment. And you might guess that the kids whose families, even though there was alcohol abuse, where there was structure and rituals and those activities the kids could count on, they survived much better as adults. They were much more emotionally stable than when all the rituals were gone. and life was just day-to-day chaos. So try to create some rituals at this time that you can do for yourself. You can do with your partner. My wife and I have been trying to practice our dance moves in the evening, have a little cocktail, and then practice our dance moves that we've been taking, or some rituals with your kids. I also personally like the Wim Hof breathing method. Wim Hof is known as the caveman or the Iceman. It has 20 Guinness Books of World Records, but has this whole breath work, meditation, and cold exposure that he does. And I've been doing his breath work for the past almost 4 years now. And once or twice a day, I just lay down on my bed or on the floor and do 20 minutes of breath work and absolutely love it. I feel more energized, more oxygenated, less stressed. He does have an app. It's just 3 letters, WHM. So W stands for Wim, H is for Hof, Hoff, and M is for method, the Wim Hof method. It's a free app that you can download, and he'll walk you through the whole process of his breath work, his breath techniques, and how to use those for yourself. And he's got one that's 4 minutes. It's a 4-minute break that you can do. So I personally find that very helpful for my own stress. And finally, I think the concept of fortitude, that this is a time when we all are going to have fortitude. There's a picture, hard to see if you looked over in the corner over my shoulder, this shoulder, you'll see a picture back on that wall, and that was a photo taken by one of the young adults I had seen who had autism and struggling as a young adult. And it's a picture of a woman, and she's out at the Great Sand Dunes, which is a national park in southern Colorado. And it's the most obscure place out in the middle, the mountains. There's these mountains of sand. And it's just desert sand, hot, dry, wind blowing, and there's huge peaks, 1,000 feet tall of sand. And you can hike up the sand dunes and down. Kids slide on boxes or ski down the sand dunes. And she is steeled against the wind. And it's a great photo of her walking against the wind. The sand is blowing in her face, and she's just moving forward. It's just an incredible picture, incredible photo. And it represents this young man's journey. And I think for all of us right now, we have to be that woman in the picture who is just moving forward, even though the wind is blowing at her and she's right in the headwind and the sand's blowing all over her. And I think that, to me, is the idea of fortitude, that we have to have fortitude. And finally, a couple things is keep looking for beauty. Find the beauty at home, find the beauty in yourself, the beauty in your children, your partner. We still have to look for beauty every day, and find some adventures to enjoy, trying to create some more adventures, hopefully outside if you can be outside, and with appropriate social distancing. And finally, don't forget, wash your hands and don't touch your face. That is great advice. Wash your hands and don't touch your face. So with that, I'll wish you all happy parenting, and feel free to send in adventures or questions. And we'll look forward to Michelle on Thursday talking about mindfulness and mindful parenting. Thanks again for tuning in. God bless.